Aloha! Alright, so here we are talking about how to have a natural, empowering, gentle, beautiful birth. And as a society, we're going to just talk about fears, right? So, one of the biggest reasons why women choose not to have a natural birth is because they're afraid. And they could be afraid of the pain, they could be afraid if something were to go wrong, they can be afraid that they might hurt the baby. There's so many different fears that come up around a natural birth. And a lot of these fears are rational, right? Like we've been told, that labor is painful. We've been told that things can go wrong. We've been told that your baby can die. We've been told that you can die. We've been told that birth is safest in a hospital setting. We've been told that you need extra support. We've been told you need to take all these tests, and if you don't, you're not being a responsible person. And if you don't birth in the hospital, that you're irresponsible and that you don't care and that you're not educated. So there's been a lot of talk around birth, and as a culture, especially in the United States, we have this inspiration. If a person has an excitement or a desire to birth outside of the hospital, to birth naturally, they're kind of looked down upon. They're not embraced, they're not supported, kind of questioned. And this questioning really doesn't feel good for the individual who wants to have a birth outside of the hospital or who wants to have a natural birth. And then that woman usually will start questioning herself. Or am I choosing the right thing? Or is this the right thing to do? And she doesn't want to be judged. She doesn't want anything to happen to her baby. And so it's a really difficult place to be in. I've been there with my first. It was a very difficult time sharing with my family and friends that I wanted to have a natural birth. And I even remember my godfather, he was a pediatrician, and he was like, "Oh, you're so stupid. I can't believe you're dumber than Britney Spears." And I guess at this time it was mosquito on my forehead. At this time it was like kind of like when Britney Spears was getting all this bad hype because she was like, I guess, driving around, and they took a picture with her kids unstrapped from their car seats and kind of like climbing in the car or something like that. One of those like stupid tabloids where they just blow it up and turn it into something really big, right? And so he was like, "Oh, you're just as stupid as Britney Spears." And I mean, it's not like fun to hear that from those who love you or those who say that they care about you. And then you really feel like if something were to go wrong, or if something like wasn't exactly perfect, like how would you feel? Like how bad would you feel? How much shame would you receive from all of those around you who would say, "I told you so"? And so then it's kind of like you don't even want to take that risk. You don't even want to try. You don't even want to step outside of this box, because if anything were to happen, like how guilty would you feel? And it's a really challenging place for women to be. And so I don't know why this mosquito really loves my nose. Anyways, it's a really challenging place for women to be, and especially as a first-time mother, if you're pregnant, it's your first time, and you're really feeling this desire to give birth naturally, and that you're not feeling supported, or you're feeling these the way that maybe you're going to be judged, or if something were to happen, and how you're going to be looked at, or what kind of mother would you be. And it can be a real game changer of why a woman would not feel empowered to birth outside of the hospital. So just to address like fears, like all fears are legit, but not all fears are rational, and fears don't even have to be rational. And we've been programmed for the fears that we have around childbirth. I'm not saying that things can't go wrong or don't go wrong, but it's really been a cultural programming of birth is not safe. And it kind of goes back to birth versus or man versus machine, right? So as birth became more medicalized, like now more than 100 years ago, when it becomes medicalized, it wants to be controlled. And so it's kind of like this male dominant like men or this male way of giving birth is be in control. And birth, as we know, is an uncontrollable action. Like your body literally gives birth. You don't know when birth is going to start, when your labor is going to start. We don't know how long it's going to take. We have like general ideas. And even hospitals have put very rigid ideas of how long birth should take and how it should proceed. And if you don't follow that model, then you need interventions. But the reality is birth is magical. Birth is uncontrollable. Birth presents itself when it's time to, labor when it's time to. There is no knowing when the beginning is and when the end is going to be. Yes, it could be 2 hours. It could be 3 days, 4 days, and none of those are wrong. And if you fall outside of that norm in a hospital, then you are placed on some sort of intervention route, and they're told why. You're told why, like because you're putting your baby in jeopardy, or you're putting your health in jeopardy, or this can go wrong, or this can go wrong, right? So we've been trained to think that birth is supposed to be this process that is controllable and that it should be managed. And natural birth, is not that. Natural birth is really that trust of the unknown. And that unknown does not have its place in a hospital. It does not have its place in a medical way of managing birth. So it really takes the mystery and the excitement out of birth. And that is so that hospital staff, hospital members, insurance companies feel like they can follow a step-by-step guide on how it should be, and then they can manage it and they can do the interventions, and at the end you can have a C-section if you need to, and that will provide a healthy baby. We can go into many details of what a healthy baby is these days, but that's not my point. My point is, and I'm not against C-sections, I'm not against interventions when necessary, but we have way overused interventions and C-sections as a general in our culture. And now sometimes women might not even question it, or it's, you want to be told, you're told what to do, your doctors tell you what to do. It's just, so how do we connect with these fears? Like, first of all, the question is, what are your fears? Like, are you afraid that your pelvis isn't big enough? Are you afraid of the pain? Are you afraid your baby's going to be too big? What is your exact fear? Because when we can connect to what our exact fears are, in anything, our fears may not be rational, right? Like, we get in a car every day and so many things could happen, right? Like, you can get hit by another car, you can hit another car, an animal can run in front of you, you can get a flat tire, your engine can blow up. Like, there's so many things that could happen. But since we're like programmed to get in our cars every day and do it every day, we feel safe and we feel confident. Well, birth is not something that we do every day, and we don't even witness a lot of women having a natural birth every day. So it is like unknown. We don't witness women having birth. We're not there supporting women having birth. Maybe our parents, our mothers didn't have a natural birth. Our grandmothers didn't have a natural birth. So there's really this mystery of what birth is, and is it safe? And now with 98% of the population giving birth in hospitals, now it really leaves a small margin for women to experience what a natural birth is, and to know and to trust in that process. So when we learn or address what our actual fears are, what is super important is to speak with other women who have had natural births and to do some research on natural births. All of the information is out there on how safe a natural birth is. And but you have to dig deep. Like, there's a really great book called Pushed by Jennifer Block that gives a lot of statistics on natural birth and how it came into being medicalized. And I'm not going to go into deep details on how it became medicalized right now in this video, but just addressing that as it became medicalized, it took the mystery out of it. It took the unknown out of it, and it put birth into a box. And birth doesn't deserve to be put in a box, in my opinion. So it really removes us from our intuition. It really removes us from our connection. It really removes us from our trust. It really removes us from that innate knowing of like our body is a safe, perfect vessel for our baby to be born. And it opens us up to be vulnerable to things that may not be in the best interest of our of the health of ourselves and our babies. And not only that, like on a deeper level of our spiritual experiences of what birth is and the rite of passage that it is. And like I spoke about in the last video of like the wisdom that we receive during labor, the messages we receive during labor, the transformation that occurs during labor and delivery as we go through the process, and how important that process really is. So as it got medicalized, and now how like 98% of the population is giving birth in the hospital, again, we're creating that separation from ourselves. And just like little tiny examples are, I had a friend who came out here for a retreat not too long ago, and she's pregnant, obviously, and she wanted to know like what position the baby was in. And I was like, well, I can just feel for you, you know? And she was like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah. I was like, don't the doctors feel the position of the baby? And she's like, oh no, they just put the ultrasound on, right? So again, the connection, right? We've become taking away the connection, taking away our hands and our feelings, and using a machine. So the machine has to see what position the baby's in, like and not our hands. We can't feel, we can't trust, we can't feel the baby. So again, becomes that man versus machine. And the question is like, how much do you, what are you feeling? Like, are you feeling connected to wanting a magical, unknown, mystical, guided experience? Or are you feeling like, no, I want it controlled, and I want to make sure I'm on the right schedule and I'm doing the right things, and I want to be prepared if anything is not in the right place or at the right time, that I'm able to have it fixed. And in my personal opinion, that's not the purpose of our labor and our birth process, and that we are not like here to be fixed, especially during birth. And on a bigger note, and you know, in our spiritual journeys, is like, we're not here to be fixed. We're here to navigate and to trust and to learn and to be vulnerable and to have these sorts of experiences, especially labor and birth, to feel empowered, to feel amazing, to feel mystical, to feel like the mystery in life. Like, we need mystery in our life. We need magic in our life. Like, otherwise life becomes very dull, and it becomes very boring, and it becomes very rigid, and it becomes very unhappy. And that's where a lot of the population may be sitting right now. And because they're not willing to look deeper, like we're kind of in this conveyor belt lifestyle, and it starts at very early age. So to me, just birth is another way to step outside of that conveyor belt, and it may be a huge leap for a lot of people. And yeah, like the judgment of your families and your friends, and the worry if something were to go wrong, and because of that, not wanting to have the experience, because again, the fear will lead the way, and we're afraid of what could go wrong. So this is just like kind of to open up a conversation. This isn't giving you exactly this is what you do with this fear, but it's just, we all have fears. They all may not be rational. Like, I'm afraid sometimes to fly. Don't ask me why, you know, like, because I'm not in control. And that's a good one for me. I'm not in control, right, of the airplane. I don't know what's going on. It might crash. I might die. But like, it's been proven that flying an airplane is way safer than getting in your car every day and driving, right? So, but I trust getting in my car and driving every day, knowing that I have a much greater chance of getting into an accident or something happening in my car than when I'm flying. So that's kind of like an irrational fear, but it's a legit fear that I have. So fears are legit, and they might not always be rational. And the point is we don't need to like fight our fears or try to convince our fears that they're not okay, but how do we explore our fears and trust? And having a natural birth is a great opportunity to go into that trust of yourself and your body, and to allow. Like every time I get on an airplane, to me it's like, okay, it's like my spiritual experience. I'm going to trust, and I'm going to allow, and I'm gonna like talk myself through the experience, and I'm gonna breathe, and I have to be present, and I need to pay attention to how I'm feeling and how my breathing is and why I might be afraid, and just trust that I'm moving through this moment. And at the end I feel amazing, like, oh yay, we landed, and I'm so excited, and now I'm like off and can enjoy where I'm at now, or maybe I'm flying home, or so even though it's like a small example of a fear, it's fears I don't believe should hold us back from our desires, right? So if I let my fear of flying hold me back, like I wouldn't be able to travel to go see my family. I wouldn't be able to travel to go see some amazing places, or to assist women in their pregnancy processes or birth, right? So, and then I feel like, whoa, if I never flew, like my life would be much different. Like it would not be as full or fulfilled, or I wouldn't have had all these experiences that have really helped change my life or my perspective or my experiences. So it's the same thing about labor and birth. Like it's okay to have fears. Like we have been programmed to be afraid of what can go wrong in labor and what can go wrong in birth, and that if something were to go wrong, why you should be doomed as like the irresponsible, uneducated person. And I just want to open up this big conversation of it doesn't have to be that way, and how can we feel empowered making the decisions for ourselves without feeling, we might still feel judged or looked down upon or whatnot, but how do we feel good about our decision, even if others are choosing to judge us, even if others think that it's the wrong choice, even if others want to try to make us feel bad or guilty? Like how do we stay in our yes? How do we stay in our empowerment? How do we stay in like, no, this is what's right for me, and I want to try this. This is right for me and my baby, and this is the experience that I want to have. And how do we feel supported in that, instead of feeling like we need to crawl into a cocoon and then kind of like even more afraid, because now it's even a bigger stake if something were to go wrong, or if the labor doesn't go exactly right, or maybe you have to be transferred to the hospital, or maybe you need an intervention of like how you'll be looked down upon. And it's like, no, like how can we feel like, well, I know that I'm following my heart, I'm following my intuition, I'm feeling what's right for me, and how do I find the support that I need to birth this baby the way that I want, and how do I feel loved and not judged, and how do I feel surrounded by positivity instead of negativity, and how do we navigate that? Where do we look for that? So just tap in and acknowledge like what maybe your fears are, and where are they stemming from, and do you want to let your fears guide your birth process? Or if not, what choices, what avenues can you look into that would support your innate birth choices and birth desires? So yeah, that's where I'm going to kind of just end here. And I'm so sorry for all the mosquitoes flying in my face. I'm in this like bamboo forest, woo, and it's kind of like gloomy out, and the mosquitoes are so happy. They're like, yes, fresh blood. Anyways, lots of love, trust, and I'll be back with more videos.